Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Wow, another year is gone. Going into 2020 here in another day here in the Philippines. Anyway, I'm going to touch on some of the news stories in the Philippines over the past year. I'm going to touch on the calamities, the good things, the improvements, a number of things as they affect expats, tourists, as well as Filipinos. And bear with me here. I'm going to try to cover quite a bit of territory. This clip that I'm playing here at the first, actually is a motorbike hobble ride from the pier in Camotes Island over to my resort probably a couple of years ago. And anyway, let's get into it here. One of the top items in the news very recently has been this back and forth about immigration and are they going to make immigration tourist visas into the Philippines more restrictive, more costly, more time consuming. This all started when a couple senators in the U.S. Senate decided to stick their nose in the Philippines business. And the reason they do that, 99.9% of the time, is that there is an influential donor. There is somebody with money who doesn't like something happening in another country, and they don't donate to the U.S. Congress, and U.S. Congress gets stirred up. And anyway, that is what I said. The more I've read stories, comments to stories, I found out that that is exactly the case. There is apparently an opposition, uh, somebody from an opposition party who doesn't like the present administration in the Philippines, and they tend to give money to particular senators in the U.S. and anyway, the U.S. senators have added an amendment to a bill basically in Congress saying that we're not going to let certain people from the Philippines, government officials, and others involved in this court case in the Philippines, we're not going to allow them visas into the United States of America. And Duterte and the government here has said, well, tit for tat, you know, maybe we will make it more difficult for American tourists to get visas. You'll have to apply for visas before you can come here, unlike now where you just show up and you get 30 days for free, basically. After all, Filipinos have to apply for visas before they can go to the U.S. And there's actually a reason for that. Many Philippine people from many countries want to go to the U.S. They want to go there to work and to live. So many people go there on tourist visas, and they never leave. And the U.S. isn't real good at tracking them down and removing them from the country. Same thing happens in every country. Uh, Filipinos go to China and different countries to work on or go on tourist visas, and they never leave. I met an American lady a few years ago. She had gone to Australia on a tourist visa and met a boyfriend there and never left. They kicked her out and they weren't going to allow her back in ever. On the other hand, every country needs to have control of its borders, who comes in, who doesn't come in. Um, the Philippines, for the most part, doesn't have people lined up waiting to come to the Philippines to work, to come in on tourist visas and stay indefinitely. You do have a lot of people who forget to renew their visas. You do have Chinese in particular have been in the news quite a bit the last year. They come here on tourist visas, not all of course, but probably thousands, and they end up working for Chinese online gaming companies. And they don't pay taxes, so there's a crackdown on those companies and trying to get those people to pay taxes, back taxes. But anyway, Americans are not lined up waiting to sneak in and overstay their visas in the Philippines in order to work for the low wages often that you would have to work for here in the Philippines. So it's a little different situation. In the end, I hope that cooler heads will be in control here, and the diplomatic solution will be that there will be no further restrictions. But it is a possibility, and you need to think ahead. You need to have a second plan in case one plan. I'm guessing that 20 to 30% of the U.S. visitors would choose to visit other countries instead if it's going to become more difficult to apply for a visa. I'm guessing that that would affect 20 to 30% and millions of dollars that are spent here in the Philippines. Something that is affecting everybody here in the Philippines, infrastructure, the build. Actually started, the infrastructure improvements started several years ago, but continue, and they're playing catch up. Recently, there's been some criticism that some of the projects have not even been started, and there's been kind of refocusing on and changing some of the priorities onto projects that can get done more quickly. A couple problems in these projects. Number one is the government's ability to fund, get all the permits, and purchase all the land necessary for these projects. It's not the fastest process in the world, for sure. A second problem is that so many Filipinos, about 10% of the workforce, leaves the Philippines to go work overseas for much higher wages than what they can make here. So there's a lack of skilled workers. And part of the solution to that is they want to train more skilled workers, excavators, construction workers, etc., and make it more difficult for them to leave the country for a number of years at least, so that they would have to work here. Now, raising wages would be a obvious way to solve that problem, but that doesn't seem to be on the table at this time. Those infrastructure projects include roads and bridges and railroads in several parts of the country, as well as new airports. We've got a new airport terminal, international airport terminal here in Cebu City on Mactan Island, allowing for many more direct flights into the Visayas. Airports in other areas are having their runways expanded, lengthened in order to handle more and bigger planes. Many of these projects are public-private, with a lot of investment from outside the country, Japan, Korea, China, and other countries as well. The new bridge going from Cebu City over to Mactan Island is about 47% complete, I believe. The economy of the Philippines continues to be one of the fastest growing in Southeast Asia, and is expected to continue that for a number of years. The tourism industry also has been expanding at a very rapid pace. They're getting better and better at promoting the Philippines. The Philippines, through word of mouth, is becoming more and more popular destination. And just here's a graph on the tourism site that shows the growth over the years, and you can even go into the different months and see more detailed information. But the infrastructure projects, the additional airports, more resorts being built, and the general cost of travel here is low enough that many people are attracted here. The sights, the beaches, the mountains, the caves, there's so much to see. The snorkeling, the scuba diving, there's so much to do and see in the Philippines. And of course, that provides jobs and income for tens of thousands of Filipinos as well. And I believe the tourism industry is about 10% or more of the GDP of the Philippines. So very important not to put restrictions on tourists coming here to the Philippines. I have read that 2 new peso coins have just been introduced here in the Philippines. The 20 peso coin is new. In the past, all we had was a 20 peso note, which was very used and often very dirty and almost unusable. And they've also introduced a new 5 peso coin. The last 5 peso coin looked an awful lot like a 1 peso coin, so they've changed the look of it and the shape of it, so there should be less chance of confusing the 5 peso and the 1 peso coin. So that is a welcome change. Calamities is the word they use here, where many of us use natural disasters. I see we get very few tornadoes here, but I have read of a couple small ones this past year. Volcanoes in 2018, the Maya volcano was spewing out some ash, and I believe like 70,000 people had to evacuate that area. Presently, the Tall volcano, very close to Manila area, has been having more and more earthquakes, and so they're warning people, and they're people who living very near that area. They're warning people that you shouldn't be living there, and they're monitoring that much closer. So volcanoes are an issue. Indonesia constantly has volcanoes going off there. Not so many years ago, many of you probably remember, I believe it was Iceland, had a volcano that went off and affected the air travel over much of Europe for several months. So volcanoes can have a major impact on life and travel. But by and far, the biggest calamity we have here in the Philippines is typhoons. On average, about 20, 21 typhoons come into the Philippines area of responsibility and affect the Philippines. And about 6 of those on average. If your weatherman uses the term normal, go find a different weatherman. Weather is never normal. You can determine averages. On average, about 6 will do some major damage to some part of the Philippines, and I've done other videos about the weather, you like it or not, different takes and explanations of the weather systems here. We had 2 typhoons that hit in December, and I believe over 46 people so far are confirmed dead, with over 20 people still missing and over 100 who were injured. The biggest cause of death was drowning. After that, being hit or having building materials fall on people, trees falling on people, I believe. So too much rain is a problem. One of the reasons why the Philippines is not self-sufficient in rice. In fact, they're one of the biggest importers of rice in the world, I believe. Because either it's too much rain or not enough rain. And 2015, when I first came here, we were in the middle of a drought, and there were parts of the Philippines who, on a daily basis, did not have water. Water had to be brought in from some other place. And in 2019, we also had a big drought, and places here in Cebu and Manila where they didn't have water from their wells on a regular basis at their tap, and they had to go and stage and wait for water to be brought in by water trucks. And I think in the last month or so, the dams, the water sources, the deep water has started to be replenished as we've been getting more and more rain, hopefully. Sports is very big in the Philippines, and if you want to watch sports, there are places you can go and watch sports here. Manny Pacuiao is a hero here for many, many years, and here again in 2019, he won another world championship. The Philippines hosted the Southeast Asian Games, 30th annual Southeast Asian Games. This year overall, the games went very well. Some of the sports were delayed because of a typhoon that came through the area. The games were across many cities, but primarily in the Metro Manila, Clark City, and Subic Bay area. The Philippines athletes were the overall winner of medals, total medals, as well as gold medals. Sports included everything from basketball to volleyball, badminton, even underground hockey. Now that would be interesting. Do you have to be underwater? Underwater hockey. Do you have to be underwater to watch that? Pollution cleanup is one of the biggest items in the news in the Philippines, and the good news in the Philippines in the past year, 2019. There have been some major efforts to clean up places. Manila Bay. This is a particular river in Cebu City, right? It's the dividing line between Cebu City and Mandaue City, basically, close to SM Mall and the North Bus Terminal. And you can see that little catch down there. More and more you're seeing these catches to catch the trash before it goes out to the sea. Many of you are aware that Boracay was pretty much shut down for, I believe, 6 months about. And buildings, resorts that were built too close to the sea and that were their raw sewage was running out to the sea. The pipes that were laid, raw sewage going right out to the sea, those have been destroyed, and new infrastructure is being put in place even to this day. They're laying more drainage and sewage pipes and sewage treatment systems of some sort. Might just be tanks in the ground that will leach out over time to clean the pollution. As I walk around Cebu City and Mandaue City, I have noticed that streams, although still often quite dirty, are getting cleaner. And it's one thing to clean rivers, to clean bays, and to sweep the streets, but the major thing that has to be done, there has to be a national program. The government, the churches, the schools, and businesses, barangays and cities, all involved in promoting, taking pride in your neighborhood. Not only the attitude, don't throw your trash in the river, on the street. Not only that, but also providing the infrastructure, the trash pickup, the trash receptacles in places, so that there is places to put the trash. And like Cebu City recently, I believe they were donated by Japan over a dozen compactor type trash trucks, so they can pick up more trash faster, larger amount with each truck. The other problem, of course, where are you going to put that trash? I know the one of the courts shut down one of the new landfill areas south of Cebu City was shut down by one of the courts. So you have to have places to take that. Can you burn it? Can you use it to turn it into energy? And of course, recycling where possible is the best option of all. Even in most of the big malls that I've been in, and it is difficult to find a trash receptacle. So people just leave there if they've got a soda or some container, they just leave it sitting on a ledge or set it on the ground someplace too many times. And now I want to mention a couple issues, conflicts that continue to go on in the Philippines. Some of this is primarily in southern Mindanao with the Islamic issue down there, and the AARM, Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, is now is being switched over to the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao with its own government set up, and you can read more about that here on Wikipedia or other news sites as well. They've got their own new flag, as a matter of fact, and there's information about this. There's actually several Muslim groups in Mindanao primarily who are in conflict with one another. there are a large group that is primarily at peace with the Philippine government, and even working with the Philippine government at the present time to help oust the more militant, those terrorists who set off bombs, which a number have gone off in the past year. I believe almost all of them in Mindanao, but in the past they've gone off in Davao City a couple of years ago, and a couple other places in the Philippines. And but anyway, here's a little bit about they've had an election down there, and these darker colored areas have voted to be part of that area. And I'm going to switch over real quick to the BARMM site itself, Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, and the map that they show, and I believe that's going to, another map I saw on their site said it was going to be updated shortly, but these areas here, Maguindanao, Lanao del Sur, Marawi is right up in this area, big lake up there, and that's where the siege went on for, gosh, over 6 months, I believe. Over 1,000 people killed as a couple dozen Muslim extremists tried to take over the town, took over the town, and it took 5-6 months to get them out. Basilan down here, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi. They're all part of the Philippines, but it is now a large autonomous area. I believe they have their own laws, Sharia, the Muslim laws, primarily in effect in those areas. So something to keep in mind. Before I move on to the other conflict in the Philippines, let me mention that, of course, there are the Muslim issue in Mindanao and around the Philippines. There are also those people, those groups that are associated with the terrorists that come out of primarily the Middle East area. The Abu Sayyaf and the ISIS, whatever they call themselves these days. And the good thing about that is that the local people in Mindanao, the Muslims, other local people around the Philippines, most often alert local authorities when they see these people in their neighborhoods, and then the army is sent in, and then there are clashes. And almost every month you read about a military operation someplace where there are ambushes and there are bombings with the military chasing these people. And it's heavy jungle area down in that area, so it's if you travel through any of those areas, jungle area anywhere, you start understanding how difficult it would be to track groups of people down. Anyway, that is an ongoing conflict that will continue for the foreseeable future, probably long term, but it seems to be contained for the most part. Now on to the Communist Party of the Philippines, and I'm pulling this information off of Wikipedia. There's books have been written, there's lots of information, articles online, if you want to do additional research about the Communist Party, and then its military wing is called the NPA, the New People's Army is what they're called. And they have conflicts. They will ambush police and army units, different parts of the country at different times, and they are generally they try to recruit in areas that are off the grid, perhaps the poor areas, remote areas where the people don't get a lot of news, and they can go in and spread their propaganda about the government being so bad and they need to join and rebel against the government. The government more and more is trying to go in and work with local government units and negotiate in local areas rather than nationwide, because they can address the issues that the local insurgents, the local communists have, much better than they can go to, I believe, what is it, the Netherlands now, where the leader of the Communist Party is hanging out there, or Norway, one of the two. And he refuses to come back uh, and negotiate terms here. Of course, the higher ups oftentimes they're looking out for their own welfare and not necessarily the welfare of their members. And such is the state of the human condition in the world, pretty much. And here I've switched over to the NPA information on Wikipedia. Don't know how accurate all this information is, but Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, which has pretty much failed all over the world, and operates in 110 guerrilla fronts across 73 provinces in the Philippines. Size over 5,000. It's questionable. You will read articles from time to time that various people have surrendered to the government, given up their arms, and the government actually gives them economic incentives as well, provides them with some livelihood and possibly with some training. And you will read about them in several different areas. Generally, they don't bother foreigners. They will attack police units. They will attack army units. I think last year there was a case where one or two foreigners were caught in a crossfire and wounded, or one was killed perhaps. But some of the different people, the Lumads, there are different groups, different tribes throughout the country who feel oppressed and who associate themselves with those people as well. Designated by terrorist organization by the Philippines, by the U.S., and the European Union. Life goes on as usual for most Filipinos in most of the countries, as well as for most tourists and most expats living here. Festivals continue, although with heightened security. The Sinulog Festival here in Cebu City, every year, the last year or two, they have shut down cell service for a number of hours during the main activities, and there's a debate whether they're going to do that. I suspect they'll do that again this year. So heightened activity because of these groups. The Philippines is under construction, and it is a great time in their history. The people are very friendly, very welcoming to foreigners in general. The opportunities will not last forever, so the Philippines should move forward quickly in making it easier for foreign investment to come in. One of the issues in holding up some of the infrastructure projects and industry in coming into the city is their rather strict laws about foreign ownership of businesses, and it is an issue. They are massaging that a little bit, changing it a little bit, but I think that they need to do much more, or they will suffer long term, and they will see the investment start to go off. I know a number of furniture companies that have left the Philippines, gone to Vietnam, and other places as well. So the Philippines is a great place to visit, to tour, so many places to see and things to do, and also a great place to retire to at this point in time. And the Philippines, I think, will continue to be competitive in those areas, and it's a matter of degrees. They can make the choices that will continue to bring growth, to bring tourism, to bring jobs, to bring money, and investments into the country. But they need to move rapidly in those areas and continue to play catch up in some of those areas. And I wish the Filipinos the best of luck in proceeding forward in the coming years into 2020 and beyond. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please share the video. Please, please give the thumbs up and subscribe. Safe travels to you all wherever you're at, and I'll see you next time.